Okay, so today we're going deep, really deep into the book of Exodus.
Exodus.
Right. Hardship, freedom, a covenant. I mean, this story has it all, right?
It's incredible how much this book has shaped, well, everything really. Religious thought, culture. It's a story that's been told and retold for thousands of years.
Yeah, and for good reason.
Absolutely.
So we start with the Israelites in Egypt. Spoiler alert, they weren't there on vacation.
Right. This is forced labor, building cities under awful, brutal conditions. We're talking backbreaking work, day in and day out, making bricks, hauling stone. It's all there in the text.
And it wasn't just random cruelty, right? It was a system designed to control them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The Egyptians were afraid of the Israelites' growing numbers, afraid of their potential power. They thought, if we don't keep these people down, who knows what will happen.
And that fear, that's what led to Pharaoh's horrific command, killing all the newborn Israeli boys.
A truly dark period.
This is where our main man, Moses, comes in.
What a story.
Let's talk about an entrance. He's rescued from death as a baby, raised by Pharaoh's own daughter, totally unaware of his own heritage.
It's like something out of a movie.
I know, right?
This classic hero's journey, raised by the enemy, destined for something more. And then, that turning point, Moses sees an Egyptian beating an Israelite. And he makes a choice, a violent choice.
Yeah, he snaps, kills the Egyptian right there, tries to hide the body, but, well, word gets out.
And Moses is now on the run from Pharaoh himself.
So he escapes to Midian, settles down, gets married to Zipporah, becomes a shepherd. But then, well, things get interesting.
That's an understatement. This is where he encounters God.
In a burning bush.
Not just any campfire, right?
Yeah, what's the deal with the burning bush?
This was a bush on fire, engulfed in flames, but it wasn't consumed. It's this incredible symbol, a sign of the divine, something powerful beyond our understanding.
Right. So God speaks to Moses through the bush and tells him, you're going back to Egypt. You're going to free my people.
And of course, Moses is like, excuse me, I'm not exactly the best public speaker, you know.
He literally says, I am slow of speech and of a slow tongue.
Full of self-doubt. But God reassures him, says, don't worry, your brother Aaron, he'll be your voice.
And so it begins, the showdown. Moses versus Pharaoh.
And we all know how this goes down. Plagues. 10 of them.
This is where it gets biblical. Water into blood, frogs everywhere you look, lice, flies, you name it, Egypt was dealing with it.
Each plague more intense than the last. But through it all, Pharaoh refuses to budge.
It's like this epic battle of wills and the stakes. The fate of an entire nation.
Then we get to Passover.
Things get very, very real. God tells the Israelites, each family, you're going to choose a lamb, a perfect lamb. You'll sacrifice it and mark your doorposts with its blood.
Intense and loaded with meaning.
Absolutely. That night, the angel of death passes over Egypt. Every firstborn child dead.
Including Pharaoh's own son.
Can you imagine? Talk about a blow. I mean, even Pharaoh couldn't ignore that. He finally breaks, tells the Israelites, get out, just go.
But he's not quite done yet, is he?
You know Pharaoh. He sends his army after them.
Hundreds of thousands of Israelites on the run with the Egyptians hot on their trail.
And where do they end up? Trapped between the Red Sea and Pharaoh's army? Not a good spot.
No, not good at all. This is where we get one of the most famous miracles in history, this parting of the Red Sea.
Put yourself in their shoes for a second. You've just escaped slavery. You're running for your life, and bam, you're stuck.
Right between a sea that looks ready to swallow them whole and an army that wants them dead. Talk about a no-win situation.
I can't even imagine.
It's pure terror, but also, I think, a major turning point for their faith. Try to picture it. The waves crashing, the chariots rumbling closer and closer, and then nothing. Silence.
I mean, the sea parts.
Driven back by this powerful wind, a dry path opens up right down the middle.
It's like something you'd see in a movie, except this actually happened. Walls of water on either side, and they just walk through.
On dry ground.
It's just, wow. Talk about a display of power.
Right, you can't deny that. God, not just delivering them, but protecting them. And that's a message that carries through the whole Exodus journey. Even when things seem hopeless, even when it feels like there's no way out. Faith.
You can move mountains or, seas.
Exactly. So they're free from Pharaoh, finally, but it's not exactly smooth sailing from here. Now they're in the wilderness.
Which, let's be honest, is not exactly a five-star hotel.
No, not quite. And this is where things get even more interesting, I think. This is where their faith is really tested.
It's one thing to believe when you're seeing miracles every other day, but when you're hungry, thirsty, lost in the desert.
That's the real test, isn't it?
And the Israelites, well, let's just say they weren't known for being, super optimistic.
There was a bit of complaining, yes.
A bit. They complained about everything. No food, no water, Moses' leadership. You can practically hear the whining across the centuries. But here's the thing.
Even when they doubted, even when they questioned everything.
God provided.
Manna from heaven. Every morning, this bread-like stuff just appears, keeps them alive.
And when they're desperate for water,
Out of a rock. Just flows right out of a rock.
it's almost like they're complaining, their doubt. It was part of the plan. Each complaint, another chance for God to show them, I'm here, I'm with you.
It's a tough love kind of thing.
You could say that. So the wilderness, it's not just a desert they're walking through, it's a classroom.
They're learning what it really means to trust, to depend on something bigger than themselves.
They're being shaped, molded by these trials. And where does it all lead them? Mount Sinai.
Yeah, that's a dramatic setting. Thunder, lightning.
The whole mountain is shrouded in smoke. This is where Moses receives the Ten Commandments. This wasn't just a casual chat, right? This is a defining moment. For them, for us. I mean, this is big.
Absolutely. The Ten Commandments, they weren't just some random rules. They were the foundation for a whole new way of living. Not based on some king's whim, but on a higher law.
And they covered it all. How to treat each other, how to write to God.
It was about building a just society. Respect, order. Those were the pillars.
And this covenant in Sinai, it was a two-way street, right?
Exactly. God promised to protect them, guide them. And they promised to uphold these laws. To be, as the text says, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation.
Which, let's be honest, is a pretty radical idea for that time. They weren't slaves anymore. They were this chosen people.
Chosen to embody this new way of life.
And to represent that, they built the tabernacle, this portable temple, a place for God to dwell among them.
Which is a powerful image, don't you think? Not some distant God up on a mountaintop, but right there with them.
Present in their lives, every single day. So, to recap, we've got the escape from Egypt, the Red Sea, the wilderness.
The covenant, the laws, the tabernacle.
It's a lot, but it all builds on itself. It's this incredible transformation, physically, spiritually.
What gets me is the sheer audacity of it all. This group of former slaves, led by a guy who didn't even want the job, they actually believed they could build a different future. A future based on freedom, on this covenant with God.
And that's what makes it so powerful, so relevant even today. It's about the human spirit. It's about that desire for something more, that need to believe in something bigger than ourselves. But before we get too far ahead, I want to pause here for a second. Let our listeners process all this. It's easy to get caught up in the spectacle of it all, right? I mean, the Red Sea splitting, the mountain smoking. But at its core, Exodus is about people.
Oh, absolutely. It's about struggle, resilience, searching for something bigger than yourself. These are universal themes.
Totally. And they connect with us even thousands of years later. We might not be literal slaves building pyramids.
But we all face our own challenges, right? Our own Egypts we're trying to escape.
For sure. And that desire for a better future, that's something we can all relate to. But like you said, it's not always easy.
The Israelites, even after everything they'd seen, they still doubted, complained.
Can you blame them? It's the wilderness.
Of course. But it's about what comes next. How do you respond to that doubt? That's where the real growth happens.
So it's okay to be afraid, to have those moments of what am I doing?
Exactly. Faith, it's not about having all the answers. It's about trusting, even when things are uncertain. Taking that next step, even if you can't see the whole staircase.
It's about having the courage to keep going.
And that applies to us today just as much as it did to them. Our own journeys might not be as dramatic, but those moments of doubt, those challenges, they're all part of it.
So we learn from their struggles, from their triumphs. Because in the end, the Exodus story, it's not just about one group of people escaping slavery.
It's about the birth of an entire nation, a new way of living based on justice, on shared values, on that covenant with God.
And that's a powerful legacy.
It really is. It reminds us that we have the power to shape our own destinies, to create a better world.
But it takes work. It takes courage. And sometimes it takes looking back at those ancient stories, those echoes of faith and resilience, to find the strength to move forward.
That's the beauty of these texts. They speak to us across millennia.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Exodus, think about this. What are your own personal Egypts? What are you striving for? And what lessons from this journey can help you get there? Thanks for joining us.